Hello, my name's Aaron Espindola,
And my name's Linda OJ.
and welcome to another episode of the Next Gen Business Podcast.
Let's go.
The Next Gen Business Podcast is produced by the Small Business Community Network. Visit them online at www.sbcncanada.org.
Hey Aaron, it's nice to see you again.
It's nice being here again.
We've had some really good reviews on our podcast. I hope you've been looking at them.
Yeah, been getting a lot of support from all my friends and family. Had my grandma actually in Mexico see the podcast, so I'm really excited for that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And a lot of people are subscribing to the podcast and the YouTube channel. So thank you everyone for doing that. And I hear we have a special guest tonight, Aaron.
Yeah, we're actually pretty excited. Linda and myself are super excited today because we get our first guest for the podcast. And without further ado, his name is Dave Ockwell-Jenner, and he's going to be talking to us about going to university in England and also how he got his first job as well. So it'll be a really exciting segment here we got going.
Hey, Dave.
Well, good day, folks. Nice to see you, and thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
It was all Aaron's idea.
It's awesome to have you here.
So basically, we thought it would be a good idea to chat with you, Dave, because not only are you my long-suffering husband, and we couldn't get another guest, joking. No, it's the experience that you had at university in England and how it got you your first job. And I know that Aaron's heard this story before, but you thought it was great, didn't you, Aaron?
Yeah, I love for our viewers to kind of see what you did, and then maybe they can get some tips from what you did and then help themselves out as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds good. Then I'll cast your minds back into the dusts of time. This was a long time ago now, folks. But when I was actually still at high school, or the equivalent of high school in England, I was kind of umming and ahhing and trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And I'd always been very heavy into computers, right? Even from a very, very always, playing with them, tinkering with them, making things, on computers. And so that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do. Until I actually started researching careers in computing, and it wasn't exactly the great money earner that it is today. So I said, all right, well, let's maybe just think a little bit outside the box here. Computers are basically electronics. I like electronics as well. Maybe I'll go to university and study electronics, and that'll be awesome. But then what do you do with the job with electronics? So cutting a fairly long and very boring story to a little bit of a shorter version, what I ended up doing was actually contacting a local electronics company. I wrote them a letter and said, essentially, I'm thinking of a career in electronics. Before, though, I jump in and commit to this long, really want to see what it's like, once you've graduated, like what is a job as an electronic engineer? What does that look like? And I actually asked if I could just come along in the summer holidays and maybe just spend a little time with some people that were doing that work and help me get a little bit, of a better sense of how that actually is in the real world. So that was sort of the starting point there. And it worked out well. They actually wrote back, which I was, even to this day, I'm amazed that somebody would take the time to write back. This was in the days before we had email, right, and social media. So there somebody actually used a pen and wrote a letter. And they invited me to come in over the summer holidays and spend a couple of weeks shadowing some of the people there. And I'll always be eternally grateful because when I got there, I was exposed to what I thought an electronic engineer did. And I got to see what they did, real life. And I'm like, yes, this is it for me. This is what I want to do. And so that actually, gave me the confidence to, set down the path of becoming an electronic engineer. And that's, ultimately what I ended up going to university for in the UK.
Well, that's actually really a good advice, because I know a lot of people, especially my friends, when you go to university or college, you don't know exactly if you like that as like a career. So just being able to kind of message an employer that has like the job that you potentially want to get into, and having that experience kind of probably made you even try harder when you went to school because you're like, oh, I can't wait till I get that job after, right?
Yeah, and it actually ended up working out even better than that because through that couple of weeks I spent with the company over the summer, they actually invited me to come and work for them during the remaining summers that I had, even when I go to university. So they had essentially an apprenticeship scheme which I joined, and so the deal, which was pretty cushy, I gotta say, it was a nice deal. But they would contribute some money toward my tuition. And in return, I would go work with them through the summer holidays. So it gave me a really nice way of, I get to do the studies that I want to do, but I also get to go and learn some of the practicality. And through that apprenticeship scheme, it was actually a big surprise for me because I kind of just originally thought, okay, I'm going to go in every summer and I'm going to do electronics, right? Because that's the thing I'm studying. But this company actually, I think, was very forward thinking. So they had me doing everything except electronics. I actually spent time in HR. I spent time in finance, in all different areas of this particular business. And the theory was, if you get exposed to all these areas of business, by the time you graduate, you don't just know the job that you have, right? But you know how that fits into the company that you're now in. So it was a phenomenal opportunity, and I'm thoroughly grateful I got to take advantage of that.
I will just jump in a minute though and say I know this story well. And when you did electronics at Bath University in England, was maths a big part of the course?
Yes, it was. And anyone who knows me knows that I am terrible at math. I am so bad at math, which is funny because people naturally assume if you're an engineer or in computing or whatever, that you're naturally gifted at math. I'm the complete opposite of that. And so actually, when I was at university, I ended up having to sit my math exam several times because I failed the first time. And so part of one of those summers when I should have been back working with this company, I ended up having to take an extra week and stay on a little bit longer than all my friends at university so that I could retake a math exam. And even to this day, I'm thoroughly disappointed because I actually had tickets to a very well-known music festival in the UK, and I had to give it up to take a math exam. How sad is that?
Tell us what the music festival was, because you cry every time you tell me.
Yeah, I was actually going to go to the Glastonbury Music Festival.
And did you try and change courses halfway through, or did I make that up?
No, that's also that's a component of it as well. So when I actually got to university, I even with all the experience that you've seen in the practical world within the company that I went to, it doesn't really prepare you for what you get when you get to university, what you see. And for me, it was, okay, you're not going to touch anything electronic. You're not going to touch a soldering iron. You're not going to touch any electronic components. You're going to sit with your head buried in a book of math. And you're going to invest for 6 months or whatever. And so I think I got maybe 2 months into the course, and I'm like, no, this is really not happening. This is just far too complicated. So I actually went and tried to change my course. I went to the leadership at the university and said, hey, this is not a great fit for me. What can I do? And they basically just said, well, nothing. This is it. This is the course that you have. For the next 3 years, this is what you will, live, breathe, eat, and enjoy. And so I actually went back and again, all credit to this company. I spoke with someone that was there, and I, explained the challenge I was having. And his name, he said, this is why you go to university. It's not just to learn whatever it is your course is. It's because you get presented with things that you may not want to do, and this is your opportunity to show everyone you can do it. And so I had that little pep talk, and from then on, I spent the remaining 3 years minus a few months studying electronic engineering.
That's really awesome, and that actually kind of relates with what my experience has been going to college. There's some courses that I personally do not like. I'm good at accounting, but I don't like it. So when I saw my program, I saw that every year I was taking accounting. That was just part of my program, and it really was not the best experience, but it helped me kind of understand the financial stuff behind running your own business and so just being able to go through all that is just kind of builds your character and kind of just sets you up as being a better overall like business person, or in your case, computer engineer.
I totally agree. And also, Dave, Erin and I talked in one of the last podcasts about how sometimes you go to university, you pass your course, you get your diploma, you get your degree, and then you enter into a different profession or line of work. And you basically, if I remember rightly, when you were at this big company in England, you left the university, you got your degree, and you had a job there, and then they gave you some work to do that you could kind of have fun with, didn't they? You would make websites and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. So I was fortunate while I was at university. I attended a lecture from a gentleman called Tim Berners-Lee that had visited our university. So for those that don't know, Tim is the inventor of the web. So many, many moons ago, when I had hair and the rest of you were all running around in diapers, there were no websites until this gentleman, Mr. Berners-Lee, invented them. So he had come to our school, our university, to talk about this technology, and I was very interested in it. So I spent a little time, playing with some of the technology and understanding how that works. And so when I went back to the company that I was working with, I actually ended up building them a website. And, I was, just a young teenager still at this point. So I was, a little bit green. I went and gave a great presentation, at least I thought it was great, on why the web was an amazing technology and we should embrace it now. And, I delivered this little presentation, had the website, to show off that I'd built. And I'll always remember there was just a bunch of people in the room just kind of all looked at each other and then like, we don't get it. Like, we just don't understand. Why is this useful? And fast forward a semester, and I was back at the company heading up their very first web team. So between just a few short months, the company had seen the error of its ways, had agreed that this was indeed a useful technology, and put me in charge. So despite me studying electronic engineering, by the time I graduated and actually got full-time with this company, I never did electronic engineering work with them. I got straight into web development, and that sort of formed the foundation of the career that I have.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. And Erin, I know you and I know what Dave does, but I'd love our listeners to know. So, what do you do now in all these years later? Now that you're wiser and a little bit older, what is your title now? What kind of work are you doing now?
Well, I'd reverse that. I'd say I'm a lot older and a little bit wiser. But one piece of advice I would share with everyone watching and everyone listening is, if anyone comes to you and says, would you like to do this? I've always said yes, right? Whether you can do it or not, within reason, always say yes. And so throughout my career, I've been presented with a number of those opportunities, and I've always said yes. And it was while I was working as a web developer, again, this was many, many years ago, there were a number of cybersecurity issues at the company I was working for. So there was basically some malware that was running around inside the company and causing everyone a great deal of grief. And somebody actually came up to me and said, would you be interested in helping us figure out how we get rid of this thing? And so I just followed my nose, as I always do. I'm like, yes. Now, I didn't really know too much about the ins and outs of cybersecurity, other than a few questionable things I did as a teenager, but which we'll talk about another time, I'm sure. So I just said yes, and basically dived on in and learned what I could. And once we'd finished with that particular crisis, a few people said, hey, this comes up from time to time. Can we call on you? And so I said yes, and found myself doing 30% web development, 70% security. And eventually the web development all fell on other people's shoulders, and I woke up one day as a security person, and spent the last, maybe 20 years of my career focused almost purely on the cybersecurity realm. And I now lead a bunch of very awesome people working in the cybersecurity realm for a cybersecurity company. So I guess something must have worked out by saying yes.
What do you think, Aaron? That's quite a good story for our listeners, isn't it?
Yeah. I think he points out a really good point is that you should always say yes to opportunity, even if you might be like nervous because you don't actually have the skills right now. just saying yes gives you the opportunity to develop those type of skills. I know for my situation, I didn't know how to do web development when I was doing my website, but you kind of learn that on the way. But it's something that if I just said no, I don't want to do that, I would have never had the opportunity to learn it and have a company that I run right now.
Yeah, it's really good. And even though I'm not like you guys and I didn't go to university or college, as you both know, I was asked to do my first motivational talk when I'd never done one before. And I said yes. And Dave was very surprised and my children were surprised. But I've never looked back 20 years later. I'm glad. The only thing I will say to everybody out there, if somebody says to you, give me, a couple of $1,000 because I can make you rich and famous, don't say yes to that because it's all lies. It's not possible. You can do it without paying a couple of $1,000. Well, you know what, Dave? I think that you'll have helped, our audience realise that, in your case, you did find university great, you enjoyed it, but we're not going to go into the naughty bits. It led you to a great career. You did want to change halfway, but you couldn't, so you had to finish what you started, which is great when you're going for an interview and they know you finished what you started. And Aaron knows that, wherever his college degree leads him, he can, do the same as you did and change halfway through or continue with what he's doing. So it's a great story. Thank you for allowing us to interview you. We think it will help a lot of people, including us. So on that note, Aaron, I think we've already got some great feedback on the podcast, and we've got some more podcasts coming up. So have we come up with any definite topics yet? I know there's a lot of suggestions coming our way by email.
Yeah, we've been having a couple different topics that we're going to discuss in the later podcast. So for all our viewers or listeners, definitely check those out when they do come out because they're going to be really interesting and they're going to help you develop your company, or even if you just want helpful tips on just having a professional career like in like cybersecurity type of things. We will always be interviewing people and they're going to give their insight and you'll be able to gain some good knowledge out of this.
That's great advice. And also please subscribe to our podcast. It's on Apple Tune. What's it called now, dear? I forget what it used to be called Apple iTunes and now it's called Apple Podcast, isn't it? I always get it wrong. So please subscribe to that and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you can hear us waffle on some more, can't they? Why do I make you laugh, Aaron? Are we in a giggly mood today? What have you been doing? You haven't been to college, have you? Because it's a snow day.
Yeah, no, everything's online right now. So I've just been doing a lot of homework lately because it's almost the middle of our semester. So we're going to get our midterms soon and all that stuff, all that fun stuff.
So you better work hard. No skiving. Well, I think it's goodbye from me.
And see you everyone on our next podcast.
Thanks for listening. Check us out at www.nextgenbusinesspodcast.com.